I'm back in my bedroom in a rented cottage in Beverly Glen, California. The window beside the bed is open. A small noise there causes me to stir. I look up through sleepy eyes and see a man, a stranger, and he's crawling in through my window. I try to scream, but my throat is paralyzed. I want to run, but my legs have lost all strength. As I sit up in bed, I see the other men, 5 of them, all strangers, all surrounding my bed, staring down at me. I know what is to follow, the beating and the raping, and a terrible panic overwhelms me, leaving me weak and helpless. I start to sob wildly, uncontrollably. It is then that I wake up.
In April of this year, the star of the world's most famous porn film, Deep Throat, known internationally as Linda Lovelace, died of injuries sustained in a car crash. For much of the last 20 years, she had struggled to live the life of a normal housewife, battling health crises and financial troubles while raising the 2 children of her traditionally monogamous marriage. Yet at the height of her fame 30 years ago, she'd been hailed by Playboy boss Hugh Hefner as the new sex goddess of the 70s, bringing the gospel of free love to an entire generation of moviegoers and helping bring hardcore porn out of the shadows and into the mainstream. But behind the dream of the young, pretty and honest sex star who was turned on to all good things lies another story of sexual repression, battery and imprisonment, far more shocking and controversial than the film which made Linda Lovelace famous. Was she really a symbol of sexual liberation, or was she, as she later claimed, not the star but the victim of Deep Throat? According to Inside Linda Lovelace, an autobiography published at the height of her fame, Linda lived for sex. Born in the Bronx in the early 50s, she was the daughter of a strict New York cop and an uptight Catholic matriarch who believed that sex was for procreation alone. Moving to Westchester County at the age of 3 and from there to Florida before returning to New York to graduate from the Maria Regina Catholic School in Hartsdale, young Linda divided her time between dreaming of becoming a nun and indulging forbidden sexual fantasies. At the age of 12, this biography claimed, she became an incorrigible masturbator, and as a teenager she started go-go dancing with a high school group, an experience which taught her that she was a natural exhibitionist. After graduating in New York, Linda returned to Florida to move in with a former classmate named Patsy, a dancer and sometime model with whom she watched her first pornographic 8mm movie. But it wasn't until Patsy's friend Charles Chuck Trainer spotted Linda sunbathing and subsequently introduced her to the joys of sex that Linda really discovered her destiny.
She was a typical hippie, smoked grass and ran around and getting stoned and not really worried about who she slept with or where she slept with them. When she first came down and started staying with my friend upstairs, it was like the first night she came down, the first time they met. She had no idea who he was or I was or anything else, and she just moved in. And then about 2 days later, another friend of mine, a pilot, me and her all took a shower together, and she was pretty liberal as far as sex goes.
That fat rock-like muscle tore into me like a battering ram, and I nearly fainted from shock. Sex was a dream until that big moment when it all started to come true. Then I knew what I really wanted. No convents for this child. I wanted what I finally gained: sexual freedom, spiritual happiness, and complete fulfilling love. My God now is sex. Without sex, I would die. Sex is everything.
Over the next few months, Linda would embark upon transforming herself into a super sex object under the tutelage of Chuck, who ran a topless bar where exhibitionist sex was rife. Using a hypnosis technique which he'd picked up in Asia, Chuck taught Linda deep throat. It was an impressive trick which was to lead her into the world of porno performance.
I convince you that the back of your throat is a great point of stimulation. It's not a point that's going to choke you, it's going to stimulate you. And even if it does choke you a little bit, that's going to be even more stimulation. And you just keep going along those lines and keep going, and pretty soon the person's doing it.
Well, Linda Lovelace's oral sex technique basically involves getting a penis that is very large past her gag reflex, which is at the back of her tongue, I think, and taking it into her throat. And once you can get over that, then it's the same principle that a sword swallower uses, who can swallow like a 24-inch steel.
Husband to the world of 8mm stag films, Linda found herself starring in a few saleable porn loops which attracted the attention of rising director Jared Demiano. With an offer of $1,200 for a 2-week shoot in Florida and New York, Linda signed on to star with porn-led Harry Reams in Deep Throat, a full-length feature fantasy about a young woman with a clitoris in her throat.
It was about a girl who couldn't reach an orgasm. No matter what she did, she couldn't reach an orgasm. And she tried having sex with several different people and different lengths people and all that. And finally she went to this doctor, and who was Harry Reams, and the doctor examined her and figured out she had a clitoris in her throat rather than where it was supposed to be. So she started.
You have no tinkler.
There's a bunch of corny jokes.
Listen, having a clitoris deep down in the bottom of your throat is better than having no clitoris at all.
Some setups for other jokes that come on later in the film.
It's easy for you to say. Suppose your balls were in your ear.
All bookended around sex scenes.
But then I could hear myself coming.
It was very poorly directed. It was very cheaply done. It was just that amazing fellatio scene that I referred to. You know, everybody was trying to figure out how a woman could perform that act so well.
For Linda, the most difficult part of the filming was learning her dramatic and comic lines, of which there are an unusually large number for a porn flick, and covering up the unsightly injuries which her energetic bedroom lifestyle produced.
When you're in my business, you have to live in a velvet box. The big fear is bruises on the old bod. Before Deep Throat, I practically wrapped myself in styrofoam to keep the bruises away. Would you believe that the day before we started shooting, I bumped against a stupid bedpost and ended up with a bruise on my hip that looked like I'd been in a scrimmage with the LA Rams? I bet a lot of you noticed it, and how one of my ballers tried his best to cover it with passionate moves. The problems we screen sirens have.
Shot the previous winter, Deep Throat opened in New York's New World Theatre in the summer of '72, where it began to attract a surprisingly diverse crowd of patrons. Not just the usual raincoat brigade, but married couples, professionals, UN delegates, and even celebrities like Johnny Carson, Mike Nichols, Sandy Dennis, Ben Gazzara, Jack Nicholson and Truman Capote. By the time Deep Throat closed at the World in March '73, it had been seen by almost 250,000 people, grossing over $1 million and becoming a media phenomenon, written about in highbrow papers like Esquire magazine, in which Nora Ephron wrote not to have seen Deep Throat seemed somehow derelict.
It became extremely successful after Johnny Carson went to see it here in the United States and talked about it on TV, on national TV, and then suddenly you couldn't get in to see it. I mean, it was just wall-to-wall people going to see Deep Throat and trying to teach their girlfriends how to do Deep Throat, you know, so it was pretty funny.
Deep Throat appealed to a wider audience, and people were curious. And I think Linda's, gimmick of her Deep Throat talent was just so amazing at that time.
Deep Throat was indeed a couples movie because it was one of the first to actually put a storyline, as silly as it was, and that was around the time that it became sort of fashionable for people to go as a couple and look at these movies, even though they were still in the theaters.
The first time that I saw Deep Throat was with a girlfriend in college. We rented it on a weekend home from college. My parents were gone. We go to the video store, watched the movie, and she gave me a brilliant blowjob at the end of it. So I was very happy about seeing Deep Throat.
Not even the law could stop Deep Throat, although it tried. In late February '73, Judge Joel Tyler famously ruled against further performances of the film in Manhattan.
This is a nadir of decadence, indisputably obscene by any legal measurements. Its dominant theme, and in fact its only theme, is to appeal to prurience in sex. It is hardcore pornography with a vengeance. It is neither redeemed nor redeemable, lest it be by the good camera work, editing, clarity, good color, and lack of grain which a defense witness, a movie critic, was apparently impressed with. But this is hardly enough to remove it from the pale of obscenity.
According to the entertainment industry Bible Variety, Judge Tyler's decision to ban Deep Throat and slap mature enterprises with a hefty fine merely made the film and its outspoken star more saleable.
I don't think anybody should regulate anything. I think it should be up. I don't believe in censorship. I don't believe in anything that they're doing. I think people should have their own rights.
Linda Lovelace was one of the most famous people in the world at that time. More people knew who she was than Dr. Kissinger. And, in name recognition tests, she was right at the top.
From demure Catholic schoolgirl to international sex star, Linda Lovelace became the toast of the town, moving into Hugh Hefner's Playboy mansion in Hollywood, hanging out with bad boy stars like Warren Beatty, attending movie screenings with Clint Eastwood, and even enjoying an affair with legendary entertainer Sammy Davis Jr. More movie offers followed, with Deep Throat 2 lined up to cash in on the success of its predecessor, while light comedies like Linda Lovelace for President promised to broaden her appeal yet further. And through it all, Linda Lovelace kept smiling.
I'll never stop doing action. I always said that one time that when they have they need a 65-year-old woman to be in an X-rated film, and I'm 65 and I'll be just ready to do it.
By 1974, Linda Lovelace was internationally famous as the world's first porno superstar. Yet years later, she would tell another story, a story of an ordeal of rape, prostitution and physical abuse. Was the world's most famous sex star really a willing participant in her life, or an unwilling victim? After the publication of her first best-selling autobiography, Inside Linda Lovelace, the former super sex star of the 70s had disappeared off the celebrity radar. Now a housewife with a baby son and a new life, her star had faded as quickly as it had risen. But the publication of a new book, Ordeal, co-written with journalist Mike McGrady, brought her back into the spotlight.
Who created Linda Lovelace?
Chuck Trainer.
Your former husband?
Yes.
Let's go back to the beginning and your meeting with him and what transpired.
In this version of the story, troubled 21-year-old Linda Borman first met Chuck Trainer while sunbathing outside her parents' home in Florida, where she was recuperating from a car crash which had left her stomach badly scarred. Impressed by Trainor's flashy car and eager to escape from a mother who she claimed had beaten and dominated her as a child and who she alleged had forced her to put her own illegitimate child up for adoption, Linda took off with Chuck.
She was growing up and she wanted freedom. She had dreams of opening a little shop and of having her own home. I think Chuck fit right into those dreams. Here was a guy who owned a bar, had money to throw around, was obviously very interested in her, and was a powerful presence.
She was pretty dumb. So everything she did, she had to be told how to do it, and when to do it, and why she was doing it, and how to dress, and it just kind of rolled along like that, you know, and even partying and going here and there, it was always a matter of telling her what to do.
Contrary to the fantasies of Inside Linda Lovelace, Ordeal depicted her first sexual encounter with Chuck as miserable.
I didn't know what to expect from a man, and I had no way of knowing whether or not there was anything wrong with Chuck. I realized now that he couldn't achieve a full erection, so I was 21 and sharing a bed with a man I didn't love. The few other times I had made love, there had always been a nice feeling afterwards. There was no nice feeling this time. Afterwards, there was just one question in my mind. Why did I let him do it?
There's no denying at first there was a romantic feeling toward Chuck and a hope that he would be the salvation, the man who would take her away from her family and take her out into the world and take care of her. He was not a guy to take care of her, though. He was a complete villain.
There was a lot of little things. Gradually, he would drop little hints about things and say that I didn't have to do those things, and that just in passing on conversation, which with people I had always known in my past never even would have had these kind of conversations.
While Linda began working at Chuck's topless bar, he prepared for a forthcoming trial hearing for possession of marijuana. But when Linda refused to manage the prostitution business which she claimed Chuck wanted to establish, he allegedly beat her and then taught her a lesson by arranging for her to be gang raped in a hotel in Miami.
Why did he take you to that motel?
He had the beginning of his new business starting.
There's a process called seasoning by which a pimp will find a girl who he feels is particularly vulnerable and able to be turned out, gains her trust, and basically sets her up as a prostitute, answering to him. And once she's in control, then it's very, very difficult for someone who does not want to do that to get out of it.
You were taken to this motel against your will?
Yes.
Were you hypnotized?
Well, I really didn't know at the time where I was going. He would just say we were going out for a ride.
Some guys got together to have a party that I knew and asked me if I knew any good girls. And I said, yeah, I know some good girls. And they said, well, could you bring them over? And I said, yeah. So I took her and another girl over there to the party. And they partied.
I had no idea what was going to happen. I had no idea what or who was behind that door.
Mm-hmm.
What does party mean?
You know, orgied, sexual intercourse, whatever. That's, I guess, what else can I say about it?
He took me up to a room and there were 5 men. He told me to take off my clothes and told me that I was going to satisfy each and every one of them. I said, "You're crazy, I'm not going to do that." He said, "You are here to satisfy those people." Then he pulled out a .45 and he said, "If you don't do it, I'll shoot you."
I think she wanted to do it. I think if I said something, to stay with me and to live in my house and to do the things we did, because I would take the company airplane and we'd fly to the Bahamas and have dinner or something. That was a big step up for her, because she was just out of school not very long. I think she did what she did because of that. I wasn't a pleasant guy to be around when I got mad, but I didn't stay mad for long.
I said, "You can't shoot me. There's 5 men out there. They won't just stand there and let this happen." He said, "Are you kidding? These men have wives and businesses and children. They're not going to risk that for some two-bit hooker. He said that my body would be found, and I would just be another dead prostitute who was shot in her hotel room.
Were they aware of the fact that you were an unwilling participant?
Oh, definitely. I had tears in my eyes, and one of the men asked for a refund from Mr. Traynor because he was very upset that I wasn't the super freak that Mr. Traynor always brought around.
How could she be held there and forced to do these things? I mean, it's just totally ridiculous. If you threaten somebody and you pick up a phone, there's a thing called aggravated assault or conspiracy to commit aggravated assault. She knew that, you know. Like I say, I never got arrested for anything.
Having introduced her to prostitution, Chuck Traynor began to use Linda Borman as a model for porn photo shoots, which proved an easy source of revenue. On the few occasions that she ran away, she would return, later claiming that he had threatened to kill her friends and family.
Linda was very afraid of Chuck Traynor for pretty good reason. In interviews that he gave back in the early 70s and the early 80s when Ordeal was out and about, he comes off sounding like sort of a good old boy.
Chuck Traynor used drugs, coercion, torture, harassment, beat me up.
Yeah. Sounds bad, huh?
It sounds worse than bad.
This man obviously had a very intense psychological control over her, and her ability to be controlled this way and her fear of him is rooted in a long, lifelong history of having grown up as a child in fear of her parents.
Well, I was the dominant figure. She was a submissive figure. So if it reached a point where dominance had to take over, then dominance took over.
I was constantly, pressed with fear. He was always threatening me in some way or shape or form.
If you argue to a point and somebody keeps pushing you, fists are bound to fly. I don't mind somebody putting in their 2 cents worth, but I don't want them to argue with me to the point where I get, upset or violently upset. And, that happened on occasions.
For the next 2 years, Linda claimed that she lived as Chuck Traynor's prisoner, forced into increasingly sadistic and degrading sexual adventures to provide him with both money and entertainment. When the couple moved to New York, Chuck attempted to fix her up with infamous Madame Zavira Hollander, later author of The Happy Hooker, before turning his attention to the 8mm porno flick industry, where her innocent looks were a saleable commodity.
The nature of Linda's involvement in her early stag films, most of which were done before she filmed Deep Throat, was that she was basically told by Chuck Traynor, according to what she said, to film these loops.
It was usually, two girls sitting on a couch, started fooling around with each other, and then a guy came in, and they all three got in a pile. That was pretty generally what they all were about,
You worked for about half an hour, you were paid cash, and you left. It was easy money, and just really almost everyone in the business took part in that for extra money, even though they didn't really want it to be known.
According to the revelations offered in Ordeal, however, there was nothing easy about the time Linda spent making 8mm porn loops, which she found a sordid and sullying experience.
Those first 8mm movies were shot in a loft near 48th Street and Broadway by a man called Tom. The bathroom sink was filthy. The floors had never been mopped, and your feet turned black just walking on them. The people who made filthy movies seemed to live in filth.
The stag films that Linda made progressively got kinkier and weirder. Linda would appear in a pissing movie. She did a fisting film, and she did a foot insertion film, which was really, in a big way, like a big downfall for her personally, and professionally. You can consider her porn career being a professional endeavor.
Although making those early 8mm loops was bearable, it was her allegedly forced participation in one particular film which was to become a defining moment in Linda's revised tale of abuse and demoralization. According to Ordeal, having refused point blank to participate in a dog movie, Linda found herself in a studio in East Village.
That was the lowest part of her life. In all our dealings, she could never say the word dog because of what had been done to her with the dog on these 8mm films. She would say, D-O-G, there's a D-O-G over there.
First of all, you got to convince the dog that he's going to get top billing. Now you got to convince him what you really want him to do. This dog was obviously trained or knew what to do, and the girl just gets down on her hands and knees, and the dog screwed her.
Listen, said Chuck, you're going to make this movie or you're going to die. That's your big choice. Okay, Linda, the director said, why don't you get undressed and we'll get on with this? No. I advise you to think that over pretty carefully, he said. I looked at the men, and then I noticed that on the small table directly in front of them was a gun I had never seen before, and I assumed it belonged to either the director or his assistant.
Why would anybody threaten her or threaten to shoot her or anything else when all she had to do was go outside and find another girl? You know, that would be silly.
I don't believe or disbelieve her version of the events. I have never seen it. I know people who have, and they say that she looks extremely excited and into what she's doing.
If I could have foreseen how bad it was going to be, I wouldn't have surrendered. I would have chosen the possibility of death. I am able to handle almost everything that has happened to me, but I still am not able to handle that day.
I've never seen a person more affected by something that they've done. I've never seen someone cry the way that she cried when we discussed it.
To me, it was extremely believable because her fear and her trembling was so real. There was just no way to fake that. And as everyone has pointed out, she is not an actress. She was not a good actress, and you would have had to have been a great actress to fake her reactions.
I was in the deepest valley I'd ever been in, devastated, wanting only to die. I looked up and saw Chuck. He had to realize this was the worst moment of my life, and he would hold it against me forever.
In January 1972, for a fee of $1,200, Linda Lovelace spent 6 days filming Deep Throat, the movie she would later describe as an act of rape. Yet even within the pages of Ordeal, there are descriptions of Linda laughing and enjoying herself on set, a breakthrough for her, but a provocation for Chuck, who found himself for the first time cut out of her business.
When they were filming Deep Throat, Linda would get a certain amount of respite from being around Chuck Traynor, because when he was gone, she was a lot more comfortable on the set. And she thought that, you know, the beatings would stop, that she'd be treated a little bit better by him.
The first day of shooting, everyone was in a good mood. Director Jerry Damiano was happy to be away from his shouting matches with Lou Perry. For the first time in months, I began to feel better. Now with the movie being shot, Chuck wasn't able to get me involved in any of his other ventures or adventures. Something was happening to me, something strange. It had to do with the fact that no one was treating me like garbage.
It was a very easy shoot. It went, I'm trying to even remember it. I know Linda at some point said I beat her up or something to try to get her to do the film, but she was already doing the film, so I wouldn't have done that. That would be stupid.
I still remember very vividly the way she talked about it and the nightmare she went through in reliving it.
We had been smiling and laughing on the set one day, and he got very angry about that and said I wasn't supposed to smile and laugh. And he started beating me for it. And in the room right next to us with the adjoining door and everything was the whole crew, having a party and having a grand old time and listening to it. I mean, I yelled for help, but nobody helped.
Contradicting the bedpost alibi of inside Linda Lovelace, Ordeal described the bruises on Linda's legs as the result not of an accident, but of defending herself against an assault by Chuck.
He went berserk. He picked me up off the bed and threw me against the wall. By this time I had learned that the best way to handle a beating was to roll myself up into a tight ball on the floor, protecting my breasts and stomach from his boots. When I was curled up that way, most of his kicks hit me on the legs.
I vaguely remember her having a bruise on her leg from something, but I don't remember anything, how she walked into a bedpost or fell off a diving board or what happened.
It looked like huge black and blue marks on her thighs and legs, and to me it was just, I had to look away when I saw that, because I knew the story of how they came to be there, and the amount of pain that went into making her make this movie. Incredible.
It could have been anything. I mean, we were riding motorcycles, we were water skiing, we were doing a lot of things. I don't really remember what it was, you know. And I wouldn't hit somebody in the leg anyway. That would be kind of a worthless place to hit them.
The greatest complaint the next day was the fact that there were bruises on my body. The director asked, "How am I going to cover these bruises?" No one ever asks how the bruises got there, but I know.
People began to understand what this man was doing to her, and were very supportive and concerned about her. So that's the irony, is it actually was getting into the adult industry that helped her escape years and years of domestic violence and abuse and prostitution at the hands of her own husband.
Linda appreciated the fame that came along with being a porno starlet, not because of the fame itself, but because it sort of insulated her from Chuck Traynor. He wouldn't be beating her up in front of other people. He couldn't bring out a bruised piece of property to an autograph signing. So it made her feel a lot safer. She said that she would still get beat once in a while, but it wasn't as bad. He was a little bit taken care of because some money was coming in. So yeah, I mean, she really appreciated the fact that Deep Throat became as big as it did, because that's what helped her get away from Chuck Traynor.
Although her husband could not control Linda during the shooting of Deep Throat, she would later claim that he ruled her subsequent public appearances as her newfound fame began to spread, beginning with her first press interviews in the summer of '72. According to Ordeal, it was Traynor who instructed Linda to retain the Lovelace name for all press calls, and who now reinvented himself as JR, the New York City photographer who had discovered Linda in her hometown of Bryan, Texas.
Is everything that you say in your book, Inside Linda Lovelace, true?
Oh, yeah, definitely true. I told exactly how it is.
That whole thing was written by Chuck Traynor. He would ask the writer at night what kind of questions he was going to ask the next day, and then he would review with me the answers that I was supposed to say the following day.
I schooled her on what to say. Always sound sexy, always look cute.
Oh, yeah.
Wink at the camera, wink at the interviewer. Always talk about nudity, you know, you always want to be nude.
With no hang-ups or inhibitions about sex.
Always be titillating.
I'll never stop doing it, actually.
He'd rather be having sex than doing anything, you know, and it was just schooling, teaching her what to say, how to say it, when to say it.
Well, Linda, don't you find this a shocking thing to do in front of a movie camera? She would look to him and she would say, she would go back to the script they'd obviously rehearsed was, oh, it's fun, it's kicky, you know, it's the kind of thing I love to do.
That hurt me a great deal, too, to have to be interviewed and say that it was wonderful and it was the greatest thing and everybody should see it. I didn't feel that way at all. I was just like a robot. I was told what to say and I said it, because if I didn't, I was beaten brutally.
As Linda Lovelace became a star, so the standard of her life began to improve, at least on the surface. In early 1973, she was invited to Hugh Hefner's Playboy Mansion in California to shoot a photo spread for the magazine. It was here, during the regular movie screenings that Hef laid on for his special friends, that Linda first began to meet the kind of celebrities who would briefly populate her new social circle.
Everybody wanted to party with us. You know, I suddenly was meeting all the people I'd ever fantasized about. And Hefner was always my idol as far as success goes with promoting women.
I think that Linda was a little disappointed in going to the Playboy Mansion because of what would go on there. They would have orgy night, like Wednesday night is orgy night at the Hefner Mansion. And they'd import all these hookers and people would come and there would be like this great big, you know, huge orgy.
We were given a guided tour of everybody doing everything. And this is so-and-so and he's doing so-and-so to so-and-so. And you run into some amazing people like that.
He was able to latch on to the people that were onto his trip also, or into his trip, whatever you want to call it, his sickness. And that was like an advertisement for him, and everybody would come to him.
There's the guy that owns the bank downtown, and he's down here on his hands and knees getting his ass spanked or something, and so next day when you went for a bank loan to buy another Porsche or something, you didn't have any trouble getting it.
It wasn't the best experience for her, but it sort of, I think it made things easier for her just in terms of Chuck would treat her better knowing that he was the ticket into the mansion, and he wasn't going to be doing anything to her if she was sitting next to, I don't know, Tony Curtis or something,
During this period, Linda began a long-standing sexual relationship with superstar entertainer Sammy Davis Jr., a relationship which she claimed Chuck had first engineered, but of which he later became suspicious.
Sammy Davis Jr. got in touch with Lou Perino, and I happened to be in the office at the time, and he offered me to Sammy Davis Jr. as a favor. He wanted me to be with Sammy, and Chuck thought it was a wonderful idea.
I guess it was an ego thing for her or something. And then, of course, Sammy was, was a great kind of a guy. If he was making out with some girl, he'd say, "Oh, I love you," and get it and all that, But there was never any realism to any love on Sammy's part as far as Linda went.
Why would Chuck Traynor always have to involve you with people that he would want to be involved with? Why? Have you ever thought about that? Why he simply couldn't leave you at home?
Oh, no. I was an object to him. I was what he considered the most perfect woman, a super freak, always wanting to do some kind of perverted sex.
It's all about control. He doesn't want, as battering partners in general don't want their partners to have any access to their family, to their friends, to the outside world. So to the extent that he was losing power, it probably was a great conflict for him.
I don't know how she held on. I really don't. I mean, I think that she had a kind of resilience that is very rare in people.
Usually these women have no money. They don't have alternatives. They don't have family support. They don't have someone to say, "Come and stay with me." And only as a last resort, they escape.
Linda's immersion into the celebrity world did ultimately provide an opportunity for her to break away from Chuck Traynor, as she began to see a new life for herself outside the world of porn.
As bad as the notoriety was, it helped me, because I found one person that would help me out. And it happened at the spur of the moment when this person said he would help me, and I said, that's it.
Having put Chuck Traynor behind her and renounced her role as spokeswoman for the porn generation, Linda Lovelace would re-emerge as the figurehead of an equally controversial movement, the campaign to outlaw and ban pornography, in which she became a leading light, taking on a new role of once victimised feminist icon.
The whole idea that people are still making money off of the fact of my being degraded and abused is absolutely phenomenal to me. I mean, I feel now that there's finally human beings that are beginning to stand up and get back their self-respect and make a change in them. I'm not saying ban all pornographic movies or anything like that, but Deep Throat shouldn't be playing, because everybody that goes to see it is watching a person being raped and beaten, and that to me isn't right.
By the late 1970s, the woman once known as Linda Lovelace had put pornography, celebrity, and most importantly, Chuck Traynor behind her. Yet perhaps the most controversial chapter of her life still lay ahead. Having met and married an old acquaintance, Larry Marciano, and borne him a son, Linda had struggled to sort out the financial dealings which had somehow left her penniless, whilst Deep Throat made millions. In desperation, she had dabbled with the possibility of legal action against those who she claimed had imprisoned and abused her. But when this proved all but impossible, Linda tried instead to make some money by writing a book about her experiences with journalist Mike McGrady.
When we started doing the book, it was a result of her lawyer speaking to my lawyer and saying, gee, I know this woman here who's living in great poverty. They're eating dog food. They don't have 2 nickels to rub together. And her name is Linda Lovelace.
Mike said, listen, I got to see you. I have something interesting. I said, what is it? Came in, he said, I have Linda Lovelace's story. And I said, we don't do that kind of book. He said, no, this is her real story and what they did to her and so forth.
Mike was absolutely convinced that Linda was genuine in what she was talking about, which was basically that she was an exploited woman.
It was pure instinct that when I first met her, I felt she was telling me the truth, and she was not a woman who was going to lie.
What was unbelievable about the story?
Well, that she was such an innocent, that she was a slave, that she did a lot of this stuff not wanting to do it. This had not been the impression the world had of Linda Lovelace.
Having been turned down by 33 publishers, Linda and Mike McGrady finally signed a deal with Lyle Stewart, who insisted that Linda pass a lie detector test on the veracity of her accusations. Conducted by respected polygraphist Nat Lorendi, the test included questions about Chuck Trainor's prostitution business, the beatings Linda claimed she had received, and the use of firearms on the set of the infamous Dog movie. The results were impressive.
Did the things you described in Ordeal really happen to you?
Yes.
Were you forced by Chuck Trainor to have sex with 5 guys in Coral Gableston in 1971?
Yes.
Did you see Sammy Davis Jr. go down on Chuck Trainor?
Yes.
Is it a fact that during your time with Chuck Trainor, you feared for your life if you tried to get away?
Yes.
Lorendi gave her tests to see if he could tell when she was lying, so he made her tell some lies. And yes, the needles jumped around, and he came to the conclusion she would not be capable of beating the machine. And I don't think she did. I mean, I think she just told the truth.
Let me introduce a policeman's daughter who's now a respectable suburban housewife and mother.
She was liberated woman in her most extreme form.
The next pornographic movie star who became a legend in her own bedtime.
Taking life and sex on her own terms.
But in the 60s starred in dozens of pornographic films.
Sensual, unashamed, and approachable.
I remember seeing her on television as her real self, as Linda Borman Marciano, talking about what happened to her. And I remember how disbelieved she was.
I can't understand how you were forced into it through lust.
I wasn't forced into it through lust. I was forced into it through daily beatings, physical abuse.
And I thought, okay, this is a case for where a journalist can be somewhat helpful.
But how the hell did you manage to smile?
Everything she said checked out.
It became a choice, smile or die. Well, and I decided to live.
And she herself was just so credible and sincere and amazingly careful.
We have to think about why it is that we doubt stories of sexual hostage taking or slavery or coercion when we believe the others. And I think it's a kind of version of a rape victim. Right. You know, I mean, 5 years ago we said to rape victims, oh, you enjoyed it, you wanted it, you asked for it. And now we're saying the same things to women who are forced into prostitution or into pornography.
With Gloria Steinem now officially on her side, Linda found herself in the company of high-profile feminist writers and academics. Under their tutelage, she would become a public speaker of note and a formidable figurehead in their ongoing campaign against pornography.
Well, initially her cultural impact was to be an apologist for pornography and to make people believe that women liked it and had a good time in it. And her repudiation of that really tore open a window into the world of pornography that most people had never had before.
It was amazing to us because, you know, we had our feminist theory, our feminist analysis, and it's one thing, you know, to hear from a feminist who's saying these women aren't enjoying this at all, it can't possibly be, you know. And it's quite another thing to see such a famous, iconic figure of the pornography world come forward and say, I did not enjoy it. The whole thing was a lie.
Most people in the States, or probably even here, don't really know what does go on in pornography. And I felt it very important to take a stand and let people know that pornography was not a victimless crime, and to speak up and set the record straight as to what happened to me.
What struck me was just how remarkable it was that she could speak in public in this way. But I began to see shortly that it was actually very therapeutic in a good way, because she was being listened to, and for someone who's been silenced for years, you know, that's crucial.
I have a lot of mail from people who, you know, in different religious groups and different organizations across the country who are against pornography, from women who have seen me on a show and have been able to make the move that was necessary to free themselves from a situation similar to mine.
Having previously appeared on TV and in the press bemoaning the iniquities of censorship, now Linda became the centre of a concerted campaign by Women Against Pornography to launch a nationwide boycott of Deep Throat, which would effectively do what its conservative opponents had tried to do a decade ago: ban it.
Pornography is to women of all races what anti-Semitic literature is to all Jewish people.
I think she was glad to be able to play a role as a soldier in the movement.
It's just basically women that are standing up, and not also men, for their human rights and getting back self-respect.
What will your reasons be for boycotting Deep Throat? It seems to me there are plenty of reasons. If, however, you decide to see Deep Throat, I hope you'll pay close attention. And when you see those huge black and blue marks on my legs and thighs, believe me, you can't miss them. I hope you'll sense my pain and degradation. After all, you just bought a share of it.
Linda would carry this new and biting voice against pornography throughout the colleges, campuses and courtrooms of America, and even as far as the streets of London's Soho. With this voice, she would become the feminist movement's greatest ally and the porn industry's greatest enemy.
I think that in the case of Linda Lovelace, they saw a great opportunity to have their figurehead. Here it is. Here's our proof. See what happened to this woman? This is what happens to all women in the porn industry.
I have no idea what she said or how she campaigned against porn. I think it was totally ridiculous that she did it. I don't know who she was trying to please.
Anyone that was going to embrace her and say, yes, you're wonderful, look what a victim you've been, let us help you, join us, become part of our family. This had to have been terribly appealing to her.
They hold themselves up as a beacon, you know, for anyone who wants to latch on to them, who are against pornography. So they always exploit them and use them to the fullest degree to get their message out.
She was traveling in a different circle, different people, meeting different people. Oh, how could you do that? You know, and particularly when she got in with the women's libbers, you know, which I think they should all be bent over the London Bridge. But I think that's what the problem was.
In the closing paragraphs of her 1986 book Out of Bondage, in which she and Mike McGrady documented her high-profile battle against porn, Linda declared that her future life would perhaps consist of giving such testimony against pornography wherever it could be heard. Yet, as ever, the truth turned out to be slightly different. Having divorced Larry in the late 90s and fallen again upon hard times, Linda lost touch with some of her feminist colleagues and befriended porn insider Eric Danville, who introduced her to the movie memorabilia conventions where she could be found signing video copies of Deep Throat. Most surprisingly, she also posed in lingerie for the porn magazine Leg Show and declared herself to be opposed to censorship and disappointed with the women's movement. Whether this brief return to public life was motivated more by financial need than a genuine change of heart remains a matter of heated debate. Only one thing is sure: in death, as in life, the real Linda Lovelace remains an elusive creature. How would you like her to be remembered, if at all?
As a survivor, you know, as somebody who, in the face of humiliation, disbelief, physical torture, somehow survived, and survived with an ability to empathize with other people and to be positive.
She should be remembered as a pioneer in the porn industry, in the truest sense of the word.
I don't know if any of us will ever know who the real Linda Lovelace was, but I can tell you that when I met her those couple of times, and I looked into her eyes, and she looked into mine, there was a very soft, sweet, hurt, woman who had had a very, very difficult and tragic life.
I'm sad that she died. Really was sad. And I am really sad that she suffered so much in her life in general. It's a sad story.
I think she enjoyed sex. I think she enjoyed the promotion of publicity. I think she didn't enjoy us getting in arguments with each other, but like I say, if you don't want me to get in an argument, don't argue with me, you know. That's pretty much what I think.